All right, welcome back. The time is now 7:35 p.m. I call this meeting to order of the Columbus Common Council Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. And when you are ready, would you please do the roll call?
Hendrickson.
Here.
Kenny.
Here.
Malott.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Rule.
Here.
Tome.
Here.
Traxler.
Here.
All here.
All right, this meeting has been noticed according to state statutes. And at this point, we're looking for a discussion on the agenda or a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Anybody signed up for public comment? Let's do a raise of hands. Would anybody in the audience like to speak on this? Oh, all right. Thank you very much. All right. Moving forward, we will go on to department reports. Those are presented here, written form only. And at this point, we can move on to the marketing plan for Columbus Commotion. I believe we have a couple of good representatives from Columbus Commotion to inform us on this new endeavor. Thank you guys for coming.
Good evening. Before you do have a marketing plan of what Cindy Festmeyer from the library, Kim Lang, and myself are going to be doing. We're creating a newsletter that's going to be coming out quarterly for the community. So you have the marketing plan, and this is just a little brief PowerPoint of the important topics that we want to touch base on.
Just to give you a little bit of history, the library, the Parks and Rec Department, and the Senior Center have, in the last several years, done a lot of joint programming. And we tend to do more and more of that because we serve the same citizenry, and it just makes sense for us to work cooperatively and efficiently that way. And one step beyond that is really to promote those efforts, to really showcase what the city has available for everyone in the city and beyond that, and this is how we're working on doing that.
Okay. So the name of our newsletter is going to be called Columbus Commotion. So we're connecting our community and more. Do you like the title? Good. Our goal, plain and simple, is to provide service for same target audiences more efficiently, like Kim said, for children, teens, families, adults, 18 and older, and seniors. Also, we want to instantly promote well-defined information to community members and those outside of Columbus, because we do have a lot of non-resident people that do come to our community events and sporting events. Create awareness of our amenities in our parks, centers, and our facilities, and continue our efforts of working effectively together to eliminate program duplication. Our plan. Currently, we do have in place the Columbus Community Center, which is what Kim, myself, Cindy, and the hospital collaborated and worked together on, and that's been very popular. We get a lot of targets on that, so that's pretty good. Columbus Public Library, Senior Center, and the Rec Department will use the city website to promote our newsletter via the email distribution list once that gets going, as well as our own pages. We will have 2,000 printed newsletters that will be distributed to local and surrounding businesses, and use of social media to promote Columbus and what we have to offer. And the results. Template photos off the newsletter can be used for posters and brochures with the city as a whole. Provides a consistent message to promote our events, such as the holiday train. Drives people to the City of Columbus website. Increased connection with our community. And my tagline that I always say is work smarter, not harder. And one fact that I thought was very interesting that I found was in 2005, only 5% of Americans use social media. And to date, 81% of the population does.
Just so you know, it's actually more of a publication than a newsletter because while it is informative, it's also a way to promote the city as a whole and all that we have to offer. We'll be able to take this clear, simple message that we have regarding what a great city we are, and be able to take bits and pieces from this large publication and use it to individualize for various departments or other organizations in the city. It'll have a consistent look, it'll have a consistent message, so that we're always making sure that we let everybody know all of the things that we need them to know, instead of them getting bits and pieces from multiple locations. So it unifies our message as well.
Any questions?
Oh, not a question, just a comment. I am really in support of this plan. I think it'll bring about a lot of community engagement and unity. Sounds fantastic.
Our first publication will be in December, correct?
Yes, well, it'll be out in November, and it's going to be quarterly. The first quarter will be December, January, and February. We placed it that way specifically so that when we have all of the programs that we need for the fall sports events, we can do that all in advance in the appropriate quarter. Otherwise, it would have been broken up into 2 publications. So it's a little unique in that situation. It's not a typical quarter, but every 3 months we'll have an updated publication. And again, it outlines all of the Parks and Rec, the library, the senior center, any adult programming events, activities, as well as resources for rentals and that sort of thing. We'll have all of that highlighted in this brochure.
Kim, right now, you guys at the senior center do a publication too. Is that the community calendar, or is that something different?
No, that's just a newsletter for the senior center. The calendar that Amy referred to, it's out and it's a web-based calendar.
Okay.
We input all of our local events, including the hospital and the schools, as much as possible.
Would the senior center newsletter continue, or would you forsake
We
that for
would.
this central message?
Good question.
We would, but it would come off of this piece, and we would do the publishing for that by ourselves. It would be a smaller, right now ours is a 16-page document, and some of that is advertising. So we would take the key elements of that and keep it going so that our people on site would be able to grab
What's the
it.
frequency that you publish that one?
That one's monthly.
Monthly, okay. Very good, thank you.
I just had a
Regan.
question on the printed materials. You said about 2,000. What's your plan for distributing that, and how are you deciding?
Our goal is just to, well, I know Kim has a great group of seniors that do take a lot of her newsletters currently and brings them around town, but businesses, banks, things like that for the 2,000 copies. And
Our plan is to utilize our own volunteers as a means of delivering them to businesses, to organizations, to the chamber, so that they're readily available. As Amy said, I have a group of volunteers who generally take our newsletter at this point out and about in the city, and we'll just supplement that with some folks from the library or some rec volunteers, whoever we can get our hands on, but they'll be spread out within the city. The newsletter in and of itself will be of no cost to the city. We're working with Liturgic Publishing, and through sales of advertising, we should be able to publish this at no cost. And then the distribution, again, will be no cost except for possibly a few people who can request to have a copy mailed to them. But we're going to encourage them instead to go to our website and look at it there, because it'll be viewable on our website.
I just have a quick question. Towards the end here, you guys mentioned the advertising dollars if they exceed printing and shipping costs. So if your revenues exceed your costs, I'm just a little confused, I guess, about the language. It says a percentage is earned and distributed to the city of Columbus at the end of the contract year. Could you clarify that language for me and maybe
Sure.
float a percentage?
Sure. I honestly don't know an exact percentage. It's what the senior center does with their newsletter now. Liturgic sells the advertising, and they get so many advertising dollars. If at the end of the year there's a surplus based on what the actual costs were, then they give us a percentage of that back in funds that we can utilize for something else. I don't honestly know what that percentage is. It's not a large percentage, but it does generate some income depending on how well the advertising staff does. And they do all of the advertising collections, and they go out and get paid advertisers, so.
So it seems like this is kind of a multi-pronged, I mean, you're going to have print and you're also going to be doing social media, is that correct?
Correct.
You're going to be utilizing the city website then?
I hope so.
Correct.
Okay.
I think that's our big
That's our
goal, is
plan.
to kind of drive people to the websites, to our specific pages, as well as, on the front page, they can click on that and get all the events coming up in the community.
I don't want to bog things down, but I wonder, since we have our social media policy, whether we need to add this group to that list for approval or not. But I just wanted to bring that up when I saw the social
Good
media
point.
aspect, just to get it done ahead of time, so you're not waiting if you want to use that part of it anyway, so.
That would be terrific.
Would mailing be part of the distribution then too? When we were talking distribution, it didn't sound like, but the cost list shows postage.
The postage would be our expense if we choose to mail them out.
Okay.
Delivering to us, there's no charge.
I have a handful of people that I mail out events coming up every 3 months, and just kind of let them know that don't have
And the seniors.
email or Facebook.
Yeah, the senior center
very
does too
little.
on occasion, but again, it's by request only.
Great. Anyone else? I would echo what Trina says. It looks like a good venture, and kind of cross market between your three groups that have a lot of similar
We're excited.
programs and
A
building
lot of work
interest.
ahead,
and
but
so
we're excited.
yeah, good deal. Well, thank you guys for bringing this. I assume we take this forward to the next regular meeting, Patrick? Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right,
All right.
thanks.
Thanks.
But before we move on, I guess, could I ask, do you feel like we need to deal with the social media aspect of that?
I guess I'd like to explore that with Amy, Joe, and Kim, just
Okay.
to see what, they expect in terms of the volume, whether some of the information can be filtered through the city's page, or if another page would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll have that conversation, and if we need to make an adjustment, we'll come back.
Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda is Columbia County Solid Waste, an update on service, the auto carts, etc. We have Greg Kaminsky from the county here to update us. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. I thought before we get into talking about the carts. Oh, am I okay? I would like to solicit any feedback, questions, or comments that you have, since we're at the 6-month mark. The good, the bad, the ugly about our service so far, and I appreciate any comments you might have. Just to give you, from my perspective, we got off to a little rough start because we had a lot of rough weather. It seemed like it snowed every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the first couple months while we were learning the routes and getting acclimated. Plus, we had holiday garbage, so we were behind a little bit early on. But the residents were really understanding and worked with us in getting acclimated to the city and the routes. We also have some issues because we ordered 2 new trucks that we're going to be putting in the city, but those take 7 to 8 months to get here. So in the interim, we've been renting trucks and using spare trucks, which aren't the most reliable, and we've had some issues with breakdowns. We spent a lot of time over at Duffy's down the street, so we hope. We got 1 truck coming in this week. We'll have another truck coming in about 3 weeks, so we'll have new equipment, which should help us to stay on schedule and not have to deal with breakdowns. The cleanup in May was a huge success. We had a lot more than we had anticipated. We took in just over 50 tons of material, which is a lot. I think being the first one, as we go forward, that may dropped off a little bit. I think people may have had material stockpiled or wanted to clean up. So we took a lot of material. There were some hiccups with that, but I think overall it was pretty smooth. People were pretty understanding that we could only take so much to get to other people. So we limited it to 2 buckets in the truck, which is about 4 cubic yards per household. And people seemed to be understanding towards that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. If you had any questions or comments or anything that you have concerns with.
Andy, I saw you're late first.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for everything that's been for that pickup that was very successful. Also, I did have a complaint recently regarding one of the drivers leaving broken glass in their area where they put their cart or their bags, and also missed pickups. I encouraged them to call I don't know if they did. It was over on Whitney Street,
Yeah,
but they said it's been consistent.
They should call us, especially all our trucks have shovels and brooms. So if there's broken or spilled glass, they should sweep that up and clean that up, and we'll send them back if they'll call us in. We'll have them clean it up. As far as missed pickup, same thing. Call our office. If we have to, we'll even come back on Thursday and pick it up if it's a Wednesday pickup, or we're in, all 3 days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll come back and pick up any misses. There are some occasions though, and you get a different driver and he runs the route a little differently, and they're used to it being out at coming by at 9 or 10 o'clock, and he comes through at 8 o'clock and it's not out. And we've had some situations like that where different drivers run the route a little differently. A lot of vacations in summer, so we may have a substitute driver, and so that can happen, and it does.
Mike?
I just wanted to comment on the bulk pickup. The spring cleanup was very successful, I thought. I got a lot of positive feedback from that. People really appreciated that. And as you stated, I think since that was the first time we did it, I think that there was probably a lot more than expected, I guess.
Yeah, we got a lot of good feedback from it too. People were just happy to have a place to get, an opportunity to get rid of some of that stuff that they'd been accumulating for a longer period of time. So we were encouraged by that.
Yep. Thank you.
Patrick?
I guess if I can comment from the staff perspective, because we deal with Greg and his crew, a little more often. I guess what has been a good thing in my view is the crew, Greg's people, have been responsive to issues. When we share something going on or a missed pickup, some of the things we've been talking about, they tend to get right on it, and so I've been happy with that. I think with a new vendor, a new community, there's always those growing pains that they got to get through, but it's been a good relationship, at least from our staff and theirs, I believe, so far.
I would second the things Patrick has said, Mike has said, and Andy as well. My biggest problem with garbage collection is getting my kids to take it to the curb, but that's my issue, not yours.
And something we're working through right now, obviously the construction's been a real headache for us because it's such a main thoroughfare and so many streets feed off of that. I think we're getting better at working with the crews and trying to get things picked up. There are times they tell us, you're not going to get it today or tomorrow. We got equipment and we're working in that section. So if that's the case, we try to coordinate. Even if we have to come back on a Thursday or Friday, they'll let us know and we'll try and get it then. But that has been an issue, and it affects such a large area that it's just something we're gonna have to deal with until that's completed.
Hi, I'm the city engineer. I just want to say, going forward, when we have these construction projects, if we could find out the best way to communicate to you ahead of time. With this project, it was very large. It spanned a large section of the city, but we also have a lot of residential areas. And believe it or not, when we're in there doing this work, that's always a concern of all the residents is, how do I get my garbage picked up, and, how is that affecting, the regular times, and how is the contractor working with? So I guess just knowing that, you're looking for some feedback, I would say, as we look at more projects and road projects coming up, we just want to make sure that, we're communicating well and ahead of time, so we're getting those issues resolved and not the day the backhoes are running and people aren't getting their garbage picked up. So, I think I can do a better job, and probably the city, as far as communicating those schedules to you guys, but also making sure that we have contact and that open communication. I think that'll help improve that as well.
I absolutely agree. I think that's something we can do a better job of. We're going to be in the coming year hiring an operations manager, somebody that can kind of assist with these type of things. They'll be more involved with the day-to-day operations of the facility. It's something we've talked about for a couple of years now, and the county's kind of moving forward with, as our department's growing and we're taking on more and more of these communities. We need a more of an operations manager to be out on the routes and kind of observing our drivers when they're working and working with the communities on issues such as this. So I think that'll help greatly. We'll get somebody in place in the next, by the start of early next year. So.
Regan?
Yep, thank you. I noticed in our agenda item, you wanted to open the discussion about the potential for moving to automated carts.
Right.
I think it's been going great so far. The comments I am receiving from residents in my area are that they are very anxious to move forward with automated carts. And I don't know if we want to discuss that more tonight, but it was an opportunity that,
Yeah,
for
it's
me to
something
say
I
that.
wanted to talk about, because we're getting that same comment from a lot of residents. They'll come up and say, when are we getting our carts? And we'll say, well, we need to discuss that and move forward with that, I guess. And the other issue is the trucks we purchased, they're new trucks, but they're the automated carts. So we want to be able to utilize them, because there's an additional cost to purchasing automated trucks. Obviously, there's about $100,000 more to purchase, but there's a lot of benefits to having the carts. So that's an issue. So we're ready to go at any time. We'd like to do it before it gets into the real cold in the winter months again, because that's a difficult time to do a transition. So we need about 6 weeks notice to order carts, and depending on how you want to roll it out, if you want to have residents determine what size cart they would like to have, then you generally do a mailer or do something and give them a chance to, if they want. Everybody, we usually start with a 96-gallon cart for garbage and recycling, but if somebody wants to go to a smaller 64-gallon cart, we give them that, an opportunity to do that, and then we'll order accordingly.
Can you remind me what the recycle frequency was?
We have a rate in the contract for either weekly or every other week. Generally, if you go to with a 96-gallon cart, every other week is fine, because right now you have bags or you have an 18-gallon bin, and those are generally overflowing. But if you have 96 gallons of capacity for recycling, we found that that's more than enough to go with every other week. In some instances, like City of Portage went with 64-gallon carts and every other week pickup, and their carts are like stuffed full right now. So they're talking about either switching their carts up to 96s or going to a weekly pickup because of that situation. So I would recommend going with a 96-gallon cart, and every other week should be sufficient.
And even the fact that you don't have your new trucks that are on order, you don't have those ready, you're prepared to start automated pickup whenever?
Yeah, we have one coming this Thursday, and we'll have the other one by the end of August. So we will have those trucks.
Oh, they're very
by the time
near.
we get
All right.
going.
Good, thank
So
you.
that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
Another factor we have now is a lot of the residents don't even have recycle bins. They put it in bags, which makes it very difficult to tell if it's garbage or recycling. So they're guessing, they're shaking. So we're getting a lot of contamination in the recycling, because if they hear cans rattling, they'll throw it in the recycling bin and find out it's half garbage, half recycle. So that can become an issue. I'm sure we're getting recycling in the garbage and garbage in the recycling, and that'll cut down on some of that cross-contamination.
Good point. Thank you. Yeah, I'm in favor of the automated carts. For one, the efficiency for you guys, but number two is the safety for your workers that's involved. It's a pretty dangerous occupation at times.
Right.
So I think that'd greatly increase that for you folks, I would assume.
And it's so much cleaner for the city, too. You have your two carts, you put one on one side of your driveway, one on the other side, and it looks a lot nicer when they're going down the street rather than having garbage piled up all day on the streets. So from aesthetics or visibility, it's much better.
So given that you need a 6-week lead time on the cart rollout, there's no objective of yours tonight to specifically get us pinpointed down on that?
No. not at all.
Okay. I don't know how the rest of council feels, and Regan's obviously willing to discuss that tonight, but Rod, you have some thoughts?
Well, personally, I would rather have weekly pickup for recycled in a smaller cart. I would think that if you fill up a 96-gallon cart, let's say with beer bottles, that could get pretty heavy or something, and it doesn't fit between cars very easily as the width. So on a personal standpoint, I would go with a weekly recycle.
That's, I guess, totally up to you how you want to do it. We can do it either way.
For sure. I guess from my perspective up here running this meeting, I guess I'd prefer to have this come back to the next cow if we want to discuss the cart rollout program, and then we can all kind of have our ducks in a row and speak to that specifically, the pros and cons and different timeline ideas. Mike, you have a thought?
I'd be happy to come back and answer any other questions at that time.
I agree with you, Reagan. I think we should probably have further discussion, and we should probably look at the numbers again. I think when we were looking at the numbers you provided, you were in competition with other vendors
Right.
as well. And I think now that we have the contract, we need to revisit the biweekly or the weekly pickup, and all those other cart size options and
Yeah, I don't have the
considerations.
numbers exactly, but I know it was cheaper to go with the every other week, obviously, because we're picking up less frequently. So.
Yeah. I guess another comment I'll add is since we've started the conversation, since we lost Badger as a vendor, I've been fairly resistant to wanting to go to automated carts personally. I think there are some issues we haven't really dealt with yet, but hearing you say that you're purchasing 2 trucks, I've kind of been waiting for that as well. It's, you know, you're our provider. If you're going to automate it, it's in the contract. If it's
Right.
more convenient for you.
I mean, we can still do it the other way. It's not like you can't do it, but it's a lot easier, more convenient, and it'll be nice to have brand new trucks on the streets rather than old 10 or 12-year-old equipment, and that's, you know.
I agree. I just didn't want to jump into it just because I
Sure.
felt like a lot of the vendors that were coming to the city that was the one option. And so we
Right.
got a lot of talking points about automated, and I know a lot of people do like it. So if that's the direction you're headed in, I'm fine with that. So, thank you.
Is everybody else comfortable bringing this back next time for a little more detailed discussion?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Okay,
Thank you
sounds
once
good.
again, Greg, and we might see you next time.
Okay, sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Flip back to my agenda. All right. Next, we have Hillside Cemetery bylaws, rules, and regulations. I think Regan is our liaison there and was an attendee at that meeting. If you'd like to lead us into this discussion, Regan, that'd be great.
Sure. So part of the discussion that was had at this meeting regarding membership and part of what the changes that you're seeing here was a discussion about how, I think currently membership was limited to people who had a vested interest in the cemetery and expanding that slightly, which makes sense to have people on the advisory board be not just people who have family plot or have personal plots in the cemetery, but also either family members or connection to the community in general. So that was the broader discussion, and then the advisory board did come up with the suggested changes that you see in front of you. So if you look at more in detail on the 3rd page in the agenda item, the changes are highlighted there to include what was discussed.
So looking to expand the membership, right?
Right.
Eligibility, I guess.
Right.
Okay. Seems pretty non-controversial.
Do you know what the intent with the meeting dates?
I think that was, if I recall, that was more a timing issue to clarify that one of the meetings is an annual meeting, the other meetings are quarterly. So there's still technically 4, but certain things happen at the annual meeting that don't happen at the other quarterly meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion or comment? I would assume with that silence that we're okay with moving this forward to the next regular meeting. And we'll vote on it there. Thanks, Regan. All right. Next on the agenda is consider draft ordinance with proposed changes to the Cable Commission. Andy, would you like to lead us into this? I believe you're the...
I was the mayor that did this change.
Okay, I just thought with your position on Cable Commission, maybe you had some knowledge or
No, we talked about microphones.
thoughts you would like to share. Okay. Sounds productive.
I can lead if
Thank
if
you.
you don't mind, Reagan.
Mhm.
After the last committee of the whole meeting, excuse me, there was a discussion about increasing the number of members of the Cable Commission from 5 to 6, and the new member being a person appointed by the Columbus School District. So the new ordinance has changes in paragraphs B and paragraph C. The change in paragraph B is to indicate that one member of the commission is now going to be appointed by the Columbus School District. The changes in paragraph C will indicate that the Columbus School District is responsible for appointing its own member. That member does not need to be a resident of the city or the school district. It can be anybody that the district wants to appoint. And that is similar to what the Water and Light member has for requirements as well. So those are the two changes that are made at this time.
Mike?
I only had one question. The Water and Light Commission shall appoint. The Columbus School District shall appoint.
Correct.
So it's not necessarily the school board, it's the district.
Right.
So does, that, I'm just want to make sure I understand that.
Well, that should be the school board.
Okay, all right, then
That
it
would
makes
make
sense
more
to me.
sense.
Columbus School Board, okay, yep. And we did discuss this. I was invited to the Cable Commission meeting last night, and they like this idea, so they're in favor of it.
Ooh, good, that's what we were looking for, thanks. Any further discussion or comment? Seems pretty straightforward to me, and with that, I would think we can bring this forward for a vote at the next regular meeting.
Yep, I'll make that one change.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Attorney Johnson. Next, we have consider draft ordinance with proposed changes to the winter parking in municipal lots and on city streets.
This is also incredibly straightforward. You could all laugh.
Yeah, I thought it was boiled down nicely myself when I read it.
The effort at this ordinance that is before you tonight is an effort to make three very separate and specific sets of rules. Okay? And rule number one governs the downtown area as defined in paragraph A, and it says no parking between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. after the accumulation of 2 inches of snow, until the street has been completely plowed from curb to curb. The second very specific set of rules is that every other street in the city has no parking upon the accumulation of 2 inches of snow until the street has been completely plowed curb to curb. This also applies to any angle parking that's located in the city anywhere. And the third separate set of rules is for all city-owned parking lots, it's alternate parking, November 30 to midnight on March 31, regardless of whether there is snow or not. Those are the three rules that are in the ordinance, as drafted.
Open this up to discussion and comment, Mike?
I know that we worked on this a while ago and it kind of went away, but I thought that there was consensus from the council that we didn't want to go with the calendar dates, that we wanted to try to incorporate the 2-inch rule into the parking lots. But it's been a couple months, so I don't recall.
I guess I don't specifically recall the calendar dates either, but it kind of makes sense if we just went with the 2-inch and then the...
That's why we're having this conversation in July.
Absolutely. Definitely. Trina, do you have something?
Oh, no, I was in concurrence with Tom. I also recall us leaning towards the 2-inch rule and avoiding the dates for the date's sake.
Well, I will admit I don't exactly, I mean, I know we discussed it. I don't remember consensus. I personally like having dates certain in there. I find the 2-inch and the midnight and 6 a.m. and some of these things can be hard to predict and hard to know. Whereas when you have a community that's just, it's either alternate side, whether there's snow or not on every street, you know what to do. You have dates set on the beginning of the snow ordinance and the end of it, you know what to expect. And so my 2 cents on this is the clearer we can be in the ordinance, the better. So I tend, especially the city parking, as I recall, the discussion on that was around having to get from one side of the parking lot to the other. And whether there was 2 inches or less, it's still an issue because when you have the parking lot to plow, it accumulates one side or the other. So I think if there's an exception and they can't park there for that day, then that helps city staff do the clearing.
Rod?
Me?
Yes.
I agree. I think it keeps it simple, just having dates, and you know what the dates are, and there's no oddness of, we got an inch and a half, what do we do, stuff like that. So I like the dates.
The simple approach to this would be to scrap everything and do alternate side parking, period, end of conversation on every street in the city, and then you don't have to worry about anything, and every public parking lot as well.
I
That's-
love
that's-
that idea.
That's your most stripped down, easy and basic approach to this whole thing. We were there at one point in time, and we morphed into variations of what's in front of you over the last few years. So, but anyway,
I know Madison does that, obviously. Do you know what time that time break is? Like, it's specifically when we're looking at the parking lots, if we went this direction, the midnight time break to me is maybe something that could be adjusted to kind of define the day
Right.
as maybe starting at like 9 a.m. or something like that.
If I remember correctly, Madison is November 15 to April 15, and it's midnight where the flip occurs. And it's fairly often where if it's the end of March and, the weather has broke, they suspend the April 15th part of that and suspend the rule early.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe it's midnight.
Okay. Andy?
Well, my first comment was, I do not like that option of doing alternate side in the whole city. Specifically, there are many streets that don't have parking on one side already, so that eliminates parking on that street on that odd day. The second comment is I don't like the dates either. However, I did, when you mentioned that they suspend the rules, that does intrigue me a little more, but, we may not have snow in March at all, and we're waiting 30 days, and, we're dealing with alternate side parking. So, those are my 2 cents on those.
Your other approach then, Andy, if you want to go the other direction, would be to dump this ordinance altogether and just declare a snow emergency and on the spur of the moment. But then that becomes very, very difficult as to how to do that and who has the authority to do that and how do you get notice to people
Exactly,
to do
yeah.
that. Those are the 2 extremes to the whole thing.
Have to buy another siren for
So I have a question, Attorney Johnson. If we went with this as written and we got a snowfall on October 31st,
Does
Is
not
it-
matter. The only thing that it would affect would be the parking lots, because the 2-inch rule, well, if you had 2 inches of snow.
right?
Then paragraphs A and B would still kick in, but the parking lots would not be affected by
The
that.
date would control, not
That's
the
right.
amount of fall. Okay,
That is correct.
thank you. Anyone else? As far as because I don't necessarily like the dates. I could see the argument on both sides of it. I tend to think snow's pretty unpredictable, but there are ways around. There's obviously, you can suspend it like Madison does if the snow season ends early and the like, but,
You could make the city-owned parking lots alternate side year-round, if you like. I mean, then that gives DPW the opportunity to street sweep and make minor repairs and things like that. I mean, there's no magic to the dates, let's put it that way.
yeah. With the parking lots, I guess, I just think that midnight's a tough time break. If I park there on August 1st at 10 p.m. at night and my day's done and I'm going upstairs to my apartment and going to go to bed, what side of the parking lot do I park on?
The next morning.
The next morning,
The next
even at 10
morning.
p.m.
Yep.
And that's,
You'll never, it would be incredibly rare to get a citation for doing something in advance.
okay. So how far in advance? That's
I do
where
not-
you're going to start having issues with DPW. Someone's going to park there at 4 p.m. because maybe they work third shift and I don't know. I suppose that it always happened no matter what the time break, but Matt.
Speaking off of experience from my living in Milwaukee and then living in Madison, I believe back when I was there, it was the day that you parked was a day, odd or even date that you kept in mind. Because if you're parking at 6 or 10 or 11 or whatever it is, and I think Madison was the one that it was midnight or 2 a.m. the next day, and that and I know people who got stung on that because you're always trying to think this future date and you're parking early, so you're on the wrong side, and that's definitely a concern for that aspect.
And you can write the ordinance to go the other way, to basically the night you park your car is the proper night. So, and it can be done either way. I always thought that was easier, and the way that Madison does it seems very confusing to me, but they've been doing it for a long time. So, no, that's true. That's true also.
I guess another question I would have, I don't plow the streets. Davis, do you have some, kind of as we're going through this conversation, somebody who's out there and knows a little better street by street makeup and kind of the plowing that your guys do? Do you have some comments to kind of help us with this?
The way it's been going right now is the alternate side parking in the parking lots has been working very well. People are already used to it. I wouldn't suggest changing to a different time or something like that. People are used to it already. I think this was brought forward because of a individual who wasn't moving his vehicle at all. And that's what brought this forward, this particular item. As far as the streets go, the 2-inch rule has been working pretty well for the last couple of years. I wouldn't change that either. But as far as the parking lots, we do need to get in there. And if it was based on a 2-inch rule, then that would really make it difficult for our timing of when we could get in and do the opposite side.
So you guys don't have much issue with compliance of the all other streets 2 inches as measured?
No, that's been working out pretty good.
Okay.
Our best thing for us is no parking in the wintertime on any street, period. That's best for us.
I can write that down.
That's the way it used to be. And, of course, we all were, no, they changed it. But we're working through how it is. The residents seem to appreciate the way it is now more. And we can do an effective job the way you have it now. I really would be sad if you changed the alternate side parking in the parking lots. That would make it extremely difficult for us to do our job effectively.
What would be the impact on you folks if we did alternate throughout the city?
That would be very difficult for us. At one time it was that way in the city, and when we plow against cars that are already parked, there's going to be windrows there. Then the next day they move and you may get a real big temperature drop. Now all that snow that was parked there is going to be extremely difficult for us to remove when it forms into ice. So clearing the streets, it's easier in the parking lot to do alternate side. The streets make it very difficult for us if it was alternate side. In addition to what Alderman Traxler mentioned, some streets there's no parking on that side already.
Very good. Mike?
My only resistance to the calendar issue is just the amount of parking. Have you documented any complaints at City Hall or at DPW from people that there is not enough parking in these lots in the winter?
No, nothing that we've come across.
Okay.
And again, the rules can be suspended. It's a simple phone call to the police department saying, hey, we're March 1st at 70 degrees. We're not enforcing. Please don't enforce. Simple phone call, and the rules are suspended.
Okay, thanks.
Any other further comments or questions or suggestions? We've had lots of ideas fly around here, but I don't think we have any kind of consensus on as it's presented.
I don't feel like we had consensus in the last year.
Been a long time.
And I think this is about as close as we're going to get. I mean, this isn't my version of perfect, but I think it's good. And we need to do something before it snows.
Well, I was quite serious when I mentioned to Attorney Johnson at the beginning. I thought you did a good job of boiling this, boiling it down. I tend to agree with you, Mike, that, it's a good foot forward. And I don't have any serious objections or concerns. And seems to be the consensus of the group here. Would you folks be in favor of moving this forward as presented to the next regular meeting? And we can take a vote on it then. All right. Thank you very much for your work on this, Attorney Johnson. Next item of business is the review of the alcohol license review process. And so we've obviously been discussing this a little bit in the last month here. I'm not sure who would like to kind of broach this subject, Patrick or Ian or...
I think just to aid in furthering discussion, we included in the packet some information from the Department of Revenue on liquor licensing. I went back to the tape, so to speak, from the last meeting just to see, what was requested. I think everybody was just kind of formulating their ideas and wanted some more time at this meeting, so we got to just kind of work through this on what direction we're going to take.
I guess I would start this off. Then I have a question. Somebody's reviewed our city code as it pertains to this subject, and we are in compliance with state statutes, or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. No, not at all. That's why I was trying to get us to follow how we have it written in the city code. So if there's a question as to the city code, and if we need to address it, then that's a different ball of wax. My point of view up here is that there is a process. It's listed fully in the city code, and I don't think it's a process we were necessarily fully adhering to. So
I believe that I believe, if I remember right, and I'll look as soon as I get done talking, but a large part of the city code incorporates the statutory framework of Chapter 125 to begin with. And if that's true, then it floats, the city code floats with the statute. There are other provisions that the city puts over and above what is in the code, and these are the things such as the inspection requirements and things like that, which is acceptable to do. But I think most of the code mirrors the statute,
okay.
I think.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Is there any desire from council to change the process, or knowing now that we are in compliance and we kind of know how to proceed from here? Mike?
I didn't read every word of the 18 pages in here, but I think the code does what Paul says right up front. It mimics the state statute along with it. So I think what we did tonight as far as approving the first license is just a good practice, and we should be doing that the application and the premises that the council should be looking at. And everything that I kind of read in here is, the first application is the most important, I guess. That's when you have your chance for review, and once you get beyond that, you're kind of painting yourself into a corner if you're not paying attention. So
Right. We can't amend a premises description without consent of the person that holds the license, correct? There's no way we can just force that. So you're right. This is the first bite at the apple is pretty much the best bite at the apple as far as governing the description of the premises. And so I agree with you, Mike, to have it presented the way it was tonight with the full application and the map, which we obviously all got to kind of get our eyeballs on and figure out exactly what those folks were presenting to us. So I think that was the aim as far as I could interpret.
Just to kind of look at some of the different items that were in here to note. The Wisconsin alcohol beverage tobacco laws for retailers, it does talk about that licensed premises may be inspected by law enforcement officers during all reasonable hours. I know there was some pushback by certain businesses on that, so it obviously is clear that they are allowed to go in there and search and look at the business on their own kind of choice during business hours. For the retail license and permit for alcohol beverage and licensing manual, it discusses under section G for premises 1A. It talks about a municipality may attach conditions, including limitations to the described premises when the license is initially granted. So we obviously can attach you know, and then it kind of goes into further detail about calling it a beer garden or a terrace area or porch. So we definitely need to make sure that we're drilling down to the exact amount or area or space, which I think we saw on the one for the painting crates. I think that's definitely, we're kind of really falling in line with what I read at least, kind of how I understand this. The one item that I kind of read in here that I was kind of curious about for H withholding licenses and then sanitation issues, it talks about Class B and Class C wine licenses can be issued to establishments that sell food under the municipality until the municipality receives notices from the Department of Health Services or the local health official that the premises comply with Department of Health Services rules and regulations governing sanitation. I guess, do we receive
We require that they give us a copy of their current license from the state for operating a restaurant or a food service, and a copy of their current state seller's permit to make sure it's in the same name as what the parent organization is that they're applying for the license under.
Okay.
In fact, that's the report I just did online tonight, was verifying that their seller's permit number matched their name and that they have been issued a license and
Okay.
what type of license. It's all of the regulations that the state gives us end up tying back into a big report to them.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I guess for me, one thing I liked, I'm a visual person, I did enjoy that matrix that we had for our full run-through, and we basically checked off that we did have everything, and everything has been, you know, T's crossed and I's dotted, so that it's clear that when we're making decisions, there's a reason why we may be doing a conditional for somebody. That's my personal preference. I just kind of have it really reinforced. But definitely, it seems like with tonight's painting crate stuff, we're really hitting all 18 pages of this information, and things are being done right. So I think we're definitely in the right direction. But I tip my hat towards having that matrix for each one of them kind of going forward, in my opinion.
Regan?
Yeah, I would echo that. I think the two together give us enough information, at least on the public record, for not only us to understand what's going on, but for the public. For example, knowing that if I wanted a license and I came in and I filled out my application and gave it to the city and knew that it had to be approved, but let's say there was some ambiguity, like there could have been tonight with this map, or we had a concern about how the premises was defined, and we had that discussion, we don't issue the license, so that they understand that this is going to be reviewed and looked at in those terms by the council. You know, it's important that be something people understand timing-wise for their own licensing. So I think the process we've kind of created, not only does it not necessarily require changes to anything, which is good, but it establishes, I think, a better and more informative, both for us and for the public, process to get this done. So.
I guess I would ask Patrick and Ann, do you guys have any staff feedback on the process as we executed it this year?
Well, we had previously given reports at the meeting. We didn't prepare a matrix, but we would give a report because, as you saw, 2 weeks, a month before the meeting where you approve the license, we may have 10 issues out there that people are working on resolving. And then 2 weeks before, it may be down to 3 or 4. And then the night of the meeting, it may be down to nothing. And then that's what we report, that everything's been resolved. There may have been issues, but they've all been resolved. Now, you'll see them, and it'll be, you know, and we didn't make a big deal of it on air saying, oh, we got this person and this person didn't pay their bill and this person didn't. We just said, yeah, we've got some that we're waiting to hear the issues are cleared. Now we'll put them right in the packet and on the record. They've got delinquent utilities, they've got delinquent liquor invoices, they've got police issues or building inspector issues or fire department issues.
Excuse me. Do you think this year logistically it happened all right as far as your guys' ability to handle it at the staff level, the way we did it?
Oh, we can do it however you want. It's a fluid thing. The only thing we have to make sure we do is follow what the state statutes tell us to do.
Absolutely.
How we present it and how we bring it to you is however you want it done.
Reagan, I think the matrix concept not only helps you, it helps me in particular and staff just to understand where applicants stand and what work needs to be done to follow through on what we need to do on our side. So I like the matrix, and I think it's going to be useful.
I do too, and I think it's only emboldened or strengthened with the recommendation of those three key city employees, the fire chief, the police chief, and the building inspector.
Yeah.
So to have that report for each and a recommendation from each, I think just makes it black and white for us. So I appreciate your guys' efforts on all this for this year for sure. Mike?
I thought when we talked about this at the last meeting, there may have been some consensus to at least bring the information forward for the annual renewal, like one meeting earlier, like the last meeting in May, just to kind of start. And as Ann said, you may have more issues there that are going to be resolved, but it starts that process, and it also gives the licensee over a month to comply with whatever issues that are brought up. And it seemed like there was some consensus there, and I don't know if that's just a policy we adjust or if that's put into the ordinance. I don't know the best way to do that, but it seemed like there was some consensus for that.
Yeah, I agree. And then just kind of figuring out what that is, it one meeting ahead or two meetings ahead of the final June meeting where we approve the licenses.
That would be at least a full month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it's mentioned in the city code, but it's not date specific, that's for sure, and it's not even, doesn't even necessarily correlate to a specific meeting prior to the approval meeting.
There's a state statute to say if somebody applies for a license before April 15th, you have to address it in the current license year.
Okay.
So then after April 18th, it can be for the future license year.
Okay.
So we have that little line in the sand, and then we send out the packets the middle of April and say, we do it as a courtesy. It's not required that we do it, but we put together a complete packet for everyone who has a license right now and say, don't forget, to do business, you have to do this again.
Right.
And we hope that by the middle of May, we have everything back, so we can put the notice in the paper, so we can hold the meetings. I was trying to think in my head, I think we probably have enough of them back to do the notice in order to have them for the last one in May, because sometimes that's as early as like today's the 18th.
Middle of the month, yeah.
This would be the second meeting, and that might be almost earlier than what we have the stuff ready.
Yeah, because the calendar's not consistent, that's.
We can certainly make that be a target date for having it in.
Mm-hmm.
Just a suggestion, if it's helpful to have information sooner, the last meeting in May, there could be a written report, that at least you can see the status of what is in and where, that could be a means to.
Mm-hmm. And address issues as they come up at that point too, for folks who might have things that we need to discuss.
I think that's where your matrix comes to life, and then you can see those check
where it
marks
starts.
disappear.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that I know that and I know Pat did too, as they came in, we'd go through them and then get on the phone and call them, you gotta bring this in, you gotta bring this in, I still don't have this, I still don't have that. And we had another list of things that might not matter to you guys, but we don't have the auxiliary form for somebody, we don't have the driver's license for somebody, we don't have the seller's permit. So there's often a lot of calls going on before it even gets to you, trying to get them all together.
Yeah, and I think that kind of piggybacks the idea of having it that last meeting in May, and then we kind of have that first meeting in June where we can get caught up on updates or let people fully apply for their renewal.
They know when we're not happy with their application.
Mike?
The other suggestion too is I think to add to the matrix just a box that shows, and we should know this, if there is any alteration to the premises from year to year. So if someone comes in one year and draws a map and comes back, what is the expectation? But I think just having a tick on that matrix when they bring that application in to indicate whether or not they're asking for any alteration in that. So it's noted at that time.
I have another form I use for corporations and LLCs that has that on it. I can give that to you too if you want.
Okay.
It's a little different because that's just things that I look at on it. rather than things that our code wants us to look at. I'll give you that if you want to see it.
I had one question. On page 29 in this packet, there is withholding a license for unpaid taxes or other charges. In the first sentence, A, licenses may be withheld pursuant to a local ordinance if the licensee owes municipal taxes, assessments, or other fees. The ordinance must apply to all municipal licenses, not just alcohol beverage licenses. Licenses cannot be withheld for failure to pay or pay taxes or other debts to the state or federal government. Is that current?
Yeah, that's that other one on the top of the matrix where the one, it said the condition of the premises, and the other one said outstanding invoices, and that included the utility bills, the personal property, the property tax, invoices that we might do for professional services, anything.
All right.
And there just weren't anything other than utilities
Okay.
on these particular ones.
And one last thing is that next page after that page, or no, sorry. Page before that, page 28, right at the top, use of street address to describe the premises. I've heard Paul Johnson say that that's probably a practice that we shouldn't follow either. Is there any way that we could put that into our ordinance to basically forbid approving a license that only had a street address on it, Paul? Well, it
Yeah,
does, but
It has to have the street address and
a
more.
definition.
That's the important part. I mean, your definition of premises is supposed to be actually fairly similar to what you saw tonight.
Yeah.
The first floor, the fenced-in area in the back, the storeroom in the basement, the auxiliary shed that holds the cases of beer, you know, it's supposed to have that kind of specificity. And most of what has been approved in the past, and this is not just Columbus, this is everywhere, is basically, yeah, the premises located at 115 South Main Street. And that's all it says, which means that basically from the edge of the road right-of-way to the back of to the backyard and the side yards and anything in between is all fair game. And once you approve a license like that, you're kind of in a bind, because it's hard to reel that back in. So I think that the code is currently drafted, does what it's supposed to do. And I think it takes care of that issue. It's pretty much up to the council going forward to make sure that we take a look at it. And like I said, there's not much we can do to back it up, but for all future licenses, like the one you issued tonight, you can look at it.
Okay. Thanks.
So it seems like maybe we'd have consensus in just adding the simple piece of having an initial report prepared for the second and final meeting in May. And that would kind of give us our first at bat on the yearly renewals. Yeah. So would that come back here to the cow and take a look at it before we kick it up to the regular meeting? Or should we just, it seems pretty simple and straightforward. I think I'd be comfortable kicking it up to the regular meeting.
I agree.
Yeah. Would that be appropriate and okay?
You want an ordinance change, or you just want to approve that you're going to look at them in May?
Right.
Second meeting in May?
Mm-hmm.
Just as a
Policy, not
thing.
ordinance,
Okay.
correct? Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. Next is James Street Reconstruction Project Update. And Patrick.
Yeah, this is still the broad agenda item here, so I guess before we talk, if we're going to talk about the sidewalks, I can just fill you in on what I know about the project as it stands. The crews, I think, as a result of a lot of the careful work that was done earlier in spring on this second stage area, the crews are now at the point where they're putting heavier rock, gravel, grading material, the matting type things to build the base of the road. So that indicates that things are moving very well on this part of the project, and they continue to do that. The other significant portion of stage 2 they're addressing is over at Dick's and Industrial, where they've shifted traffic to more to the east and east-northeast lanes as they work on the south portion of that area now. So those who go through that area will clearly be directed to different areas, but traffic can still get through. So those are really the two big things that are going on right now. The contractor requested to work on Saturday, and they did put in a full day. But from what I hear, that's not planned anytime soon to continue. So, but they know that they need to get prior permission to work on Saturday. So that leaves what the DOT presented in terms of the sidewalks, and I guess I'll leave it to you, Reagan, just to direct on how you want to address that.
Yeah, first off, I really did appreciate Dave Pylon and some of his crew from coming down here this evening and kind of presenting the nuts and bolts of the issue. I think it is critical to acknowledge the geographical challenges they were presented with there, and I think he did a good job of laying that out for us in black and white tonight. I think material choice, the concrete right now is just, straight concrete. Like Rod mentioned before, we don't have the signage in, we don't have poles in, we don't have trees in, things that are going to break that up and be less inviting to pedestrians. Personally, the angle of it would be enough to discourage me from walking on it, but I was glad to see they're ready to, work with us on it, see if we have some alternate plans. And I like the idea of the step. 78-foot length is very considerable, so I think it would alleviate a lot of the issues that we have right now as far as, parallel parking against that curb and issues we could have with door scrapes and the like. But Andy, you have thoughts?
Yeah, I also appreciated those guys coming in, and it kind of solidified, what my thinking on this. I actually think it should stay how it is. I don't like the step idea. Just like that nice lady that came up there and spoke, you use common sense. You don't walk on the slope. You have a 5-foot sidewalk. And the other citizen who mentioned that you have several people walking, side by side, just tuck in behind the other person. I mean, I like that part of it, where I just I don't like how it looks, but I think, with the light poles and, if it ever, when it gets dressed up down there, I think we'll be in better shape. So.
Since I'm a DOT employee, I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation.
Okay, thank you. Regan, I think you were first.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of echo what Andy is saying. I mean, we can explore this stuff if people are so inclined. I don't see the need, other than maybe with the door scrape issue would be maybe the one thing. Mm-hmm. And then that would require that discussion of who's going to cover the cost of that? How does it impact the design of the finishing touches we'd like to add? But yeah, I think once it's done, it's going to be a lot less likely people would want to walk on that side if they were inclined. And I guess I would also just point out that of all of the sidewalks in town, they have 5 feet. A lot of the other ones, you have maybe 2, and they're very uneven. I know we do the best we can, and we get to them as we can, but you have to pay attention to where you're walking. So I don't think that changes just because we're downtown.
Trina?
I was really impressed with how well they did with difficult terrain. It really wasn't an easy area whatsoever. I'm pretty against the idea of putting in the little step. To me, that seems a little bit more trippable to have a step and just a little step and just one long area instead of having it consistently slanted.
I feel like we need to do something because of the door ding issue. I mean, hearing them even acknowledge that kind of surprised me. Patrick and I met with Dave and several of the staff last week, and that's the issue I brought up. I went down there myself, and my car did hit the concrete right away, and I think that's going to be a liability that the city could suffer for the next 50 years if we don't solve it. That's what is the person going to do when they beat up the end of their car door? They're going to go marching into the business in front of them and accuse them and try to hold them liable, then they're going to come after the city, and I think it's something that we can avoid. I think people need to understand that it does look different than it was before for a reason, and we can't have what we had before. It just wouldn't be compliant. But I do feel like that we need to do something to prevent the door ding issue and create better visibility between the sidewalk and the terrace so people acknowledge the terrace is not for walking on. And I agree, once we get light poles and things of that nature in there, that will help as well. But I feel like a step would help create that visual break as well. And I think Dave said something I hadn't thought of, someone who's visually impaired, if they have a stick to guide them, they're not going to sense a 1-inch drop on the edge of the sidewalk that could take them down, you know, a steep grade versus a drop that's 7 inches. They're going to find right away. So I think that helps define the border for the ADA requirements a little bit more as well. And I'm in favor of the DOT picking up the tab for these changes as well.
I concur with everything you said. I think we need to consider the step for those very reasons you listed. I also think it's a very long block. It gives a pedestrian who's parked in the middle of the block, say stalls, you know, even stall 4 is considerably recessed off the intersection. So you're kind of in the middle of the block, kind of prevents people from having to walk all around. But the door scrape is probably the number one. I don't think we all, I know I don't drive a 2010, whatever that was, but yeah, there you go. That's probably a pretty typical size car, but you know, they did their best to illustrate that it's a potential issue, hedging their bets a little bit, which I can see why, but yeah, I think they acknowledge that there's potential for future strife on our end. Rod, you got something?
I agree. I think we need to have the door ding is the only issue that I think is really relevant, and sadly would lose a tree, but that tree would be near the cage anyway, so I'm not sure how long that would last. So I would be in favor of going with the step in that area for only that reason.
Andy?
My question is for Attorney Johnson. Is the city liable for door dings on a curb? Would the business owner in front of the building be liable?
No, I don't believe so. Not the business owner, certainly not. The city's liability, I don't think that would apply here, no.
So nobody would be liable?
Well, well, yeah, operator error, perhaps. And I mean, the DOT is building the sidewalk pursuant to their standards and pursuant to the ADA code. So it's a door scrape, and I'll refer to the lady, common sense and personal responsibility. The one other thing is, as long as Jesse hasn't turned me off yet, the one other the one other thing I'll mention is that the official Department of Transportation vehicle used to conduct the door ding tests is a very standard car, but it's also a very low riding car, and anybody with an SUV or a truck is not going to have any of those issues whatsoever, and you know that there's a fair amount of those on the road as well. So that's all I got.
Mike?
I also think that before we paint ourselves into a corner on what the cure is, I think Dave presented us with an option, and that's not the only option. I think the door ding issue could be cured several different ways. I think he looked at it from the most simple approach, but I don't think he was telling us what we had to do. I think the door is open for a resolution on that. I was a little confused when I heard that would not affect the light pole placement, because when you look at the picture, the light poles are placed in the terrace. Or any other utilities that are there, curb stops, etc., how that would be affected in that area if that grade was changed and flattened out. So I don't think this is something that we really need to say yes to or no to right now. They're going to be working in town till October, and if there's going to be some concrete replaced, I don't think that they need an answer immediately, but I hope it's something that we consider looking at a little further, especially since the DOT came all the way out and seems to be offering some flexibility with us.
Absolutely. Rod?
One other thing is that I tested it a couple of weeks ago with my 2006 Subaru, and with and without passenger, and I didn't have any problems with my doors. And I have had other places where I have dinged my door in other towns, so it's not like we aren't unique if we have a door ding problem.
Mm-hmm. Patrick?
Just one thing comes to mind is, yes, DOT, the contractors are going to be in here for a long time. They're going to pour a lot of concrete yet. But in discussions that I've had with DOT, it appears that the engineering and the design on the west side here, there are areas that are similar. So, and I'm not sure the timeline of pouring sidewalks there, but that might be something we'd want to, and my plan is to talk about it at the weekly meetings with DOT, is before they pour that, we should have something, understand what it is going to look like, and we don't want to put ourselves in the same situation, so.
I'm sorry.
Oh, the real question is who pays for it?
Yeah, I think that would be all part of the negotiation and discussion of potential solutions as well. So they seemed receptive to just starting the conversation. So I think that's something that could be determined later. Mike?
I just wanted to echo what Patrick said. I know at the last downtown business meeting, there were some concerns from people on this side of the project that were a bit curious about what had happened over there, because they wanted to know if that was going to be mimicked on this side of James Street as well. So I agree that's probably something we want to consider, that if they consider that normal over there, they might consider that normal on this end as well. There's not the steep grade to deal with, obviously, so we don't know what it's going to look like. But I hope that we can consider communicating with the DOT and at least finding out the cost issue.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it would be a no-brainer if the DOT is willing to pick up the cost of changing it for us, why we wouldn't pursue that.
Mm. Well, and I think it's just in the general interest of the public here in Columbus, where it's kind of seems to fall down the lines of the public comments tonight about 50-50. So I think opening it up for further discussion does no harm and only furthers our understanding of the situation. So that's where I would throw my consensus anyway. Andy?
Yeah, like I said, I wasn't not a big fan of the step. However, I am open to other alternatives like Mike suggested. So, and then I'd also like to nail down at some point, how that's going to be paid for.
Noted. So should we just keep this on the agenda for the next COW, and we can maybe formulate our own ideas and plans, and further discussions might happen along the way to where we could be updated. And obviously the representative, the young woman, I can't remember her last name, Carla, Carla North, thank you, Mike, with, open invitation to start this process. So I say let's take advantage of that and see where we end up. All right, next we have city clerk's position.
I can start that off.
Please do. Thank you.
And the information was made clear at the last meeting here that we're going to need to fill that position. I had hoped to get you a copy of the clerk job description and then a proposed change earlier. But I wanted to make sure that I talked to Ann, of course, and I talked to other staff about it a little bit to develop what I have listed as a proposed description, also taking into account, other communities, how they address the clerk position. As I've mentioned, because this happened in the middle of our review and recruitment for an economic development director, made me kind of take a step back and look at the delegation of duties, and I'd like to explore some changes. And as Ann and I have talked about, and as she has described, she started before there was a city administrator. A lot of duties fell to her and have stuck, and we're of the benefit for it. Now that we'll be bringing in someone new, I think it would behoove us to have a clerk that can focus on clerk things, which is in itself very expansive and lots of responsibility. So what you have is the two versions, the current and then a proposed. The proposed is kind of a scaled down version of what we have right now. So I'll listen to any feedback you might have. I think it's important that we start the recruitment, the search process as soon as we can. I'm of the feeling that if, there's still a couple of tweaks we need to make with this, that's fine. It could happen in conjunction with the start of the process. But it's here because it's timely and want to see if we can move forward.
And thanks for your work on this, Patrick. I think everyone's just kind of taking the time to peruse this and understand the time pressure and all that good stuff as far as getting it to us.
Yeah.
And about us needing to kind of keep the ball moving here. I'm not really ready to digest this tonight myself, but, Matt?
Yeah, I think you kind of took the words in my mouth. We have a current one of 4 pages and a proposed one of 3 pages. I guess if you want to hit kind of some of the highlights of major changes, but I definitely think we need to dig our teeth into this a little bit more. If we're making kind of a...
I'm sorry?
I said if we're making kind of a major change to the roles and responsibilities, at this time.
Yeah, I guess what I can say about the proposed is it focuses on, the record keeping, the licenses, permit execution, administration, elections, of course. We talk a little bit about the supervisory duties, and there's a lot dealing with, the dissemination of reports and communicating with the state. It goes well beyond what's in here, and Ann made that clear when we talked. So I guess if I have a suggestion or just to throw this out, I'd be happy to bring this back at the next committee of the whole for more questions and things. I'm maybe going to turn a question to Paul as to whether we can initiate the process for the search right now without where we're at this point with the job description.
Well, you can start the search process whenever you like, but the earlier or the sooner that you have the job description firmed up and ready to roll, the better off you're going to be, because one of the first questions that people are going to be asking is, what's the job? So, and again, every municipality, clerks have a lot of similar duties, but every municipality is different as well. And a lot of it is the internal culture of the municipality that you're working with, just like here. I mean, Ann does a lot more than a lot of clerks do, but she also doesn't do some things that other clerks do. So it just all, it all depends on what it is that you're looking for. So the sooner that you have your job description firmed up, the better off you'll be. I guess that's the answer I can give.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the fact that we need to have this lined out also, so we know what qualifications we're looking for, right? If we're going to kind of redefine a role, it might change the bona fides that we're requiring. Any other questions, comments, concerns? At this point, I guess I kind of like Patrick's idea here, bringing it back, unless there was some other date between now and the first August meeting that we've got something scheduled. There's nothing that pops to my mind where this could be addressed, just in the in the effort to keep it moving.
And the bottom line is 2 weeks is probably not a fatal flaw here. I don't think it's realistic to think we'd have a candidate by the September 1st date, or, and we'll manage. It's, it's just it's a key position we'd like to get working on, but I think as I sit here and based on a little bit of what Paul said, maybe it's just best to allow you to look at this for the next 2 weeks, come back to the COW and further discuss it.
Yeah, I like that. Mike, you have something?
I think the general gist that I'm getting is that you're basically we're gonna be looking for more of a clerk that has basic duties, and that the duties that Ann has assumed over the years are gonna hopefully fall under economic development or planning director or something of that sort, is what I'm getting at.
A piece of it, yeah.
Okay.
And that would be identified in a job description for that position. Clearly, we wouldn't let anything slide. It would be assigned to someone here. But what you've got there is really a breakdown of the core or the typical duties for a city clerk.
I guess you don't know what you're going to get for a candidate pool, but what I'm thinking about is if we do get a good group of candidates and you have a clerk that has some specific skills that would kind of help fill in a hole, are we going to try to hire both of these at the same time, or is one going to come first? Do you want to do are you looking at filling the clerk's position first or the other one?
I view the clerk as a much higher priority.
Okay.
Yep. I'm still working on the other one. I think that's important too, but really the focus right now and the time that I have on this is with the clerk.
Because, then the job description will kind of be more defined by the other position based on the skill set you get off of the clerk's position, I guess.
Yeah. For instance, we talk about the planning, zoning, administration type thing. It's not even listed in the current job description, but we've had someone who's been very capable in that area.
For the city clerk.
Well, it's not in the job description of the city clerk in the ordinance, but in the ordinance, there are things assigned to the city clerk scattered through all the chapters.
And
But you can make it be more or less depending on who the
Yeah.
person is. Yeah. We're not that big of a place.
Oh, absolutely.
And things,
You guys have to wear a lot of hats. We get that for sure.
yeah, the things meld together. Yes, planning and zoning stuff involves records, involves applications that a clerk would do. So there's still going to be that. It's not a complete severing of those things, but yeah.
Anyone else? Mike, did you have something
I
further?
think I've seen Ann lift boxes that are more than 25 pounds, by the way. Those papers are heavy.
Maintains harmony.
Hey.
That's why I said
I just wanted to point out to Patrick's point and Attorney Johnson's point about having this as solid as you can, but when you start, I would just point out the minimum qualifications are the same in both the current and the proposed. So there's a jumping off point here to starting something that I think would, make sense while we take the next couple weeks to read over this and define it, especially if that initial cattle call, if you will, is going to have very basic information anyway. So just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, given where we are in the process, I think you make a good point there, Regan. Anyone else? So at this point, is that kind of a clear directive for you, Patrick?
I just wanted to clarify is what you're saying is it's okay to start the process, and then there was a support from.
I would think
It
it'd
makes
be okay
sense to me,
start.
given that, like she's saying, the essential qualifications are the same, and then we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be just that initial round of you kind of, yeah, exactly, filtering out the applicants based on that. So, Mike?
Maybe it's in here, maybe it's not, but in the proposed, I don't see like a list of specific type of software that you use, and like Outlook or whatever other software?
Well, you know, it's hard, you'll be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't know how to use some kind of software when coming in the door now. Everybody's using it. And you can learn. I mean, accounting programs, government accounting is gonna be a little different than private sector. But if you're of a mindset to do the job, you can pick it up. Our accounting program is very easy. It's very user-friendly.
Okay.
And it's very, it's a standard in the field, I think, and it's really easy to pick up. So somebody's gonna be able to come in, and if they're familiar with working on computers and using word processing programs and databases and things, they'll pick it up. You don't find many people nowadays that don't do that kind of stuff. Even old people like me.
I'm just hoping we don't find one of those people. But it says word processing and spreadsheet software.
Well, some of the language in this app, this job description goes, has been in it for a long time.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna be that hard to find people that are proficient in general office things and that are familiar with using accounting programs. Ours might be a little different, but they'll learn it.
Okay.
Yeah, like some of like those references are a little outdated, but we still use it. I have a calculator that I use all the time. Left-handed, of course.
Nice.
Left-handed calculator? Yes, my mouse is left-handed too.
So we're clear now? Okay, thank you guys. So next we have the 2017 slurry bid opening, and for that we have City Engineer Letha with us.
Good evening again, Council and Mayor. I really got my first good look at the agenda item earlier tonight, and I did notice that it was just referencing the slurry seal bid opening results, and in fact there were 2 bid openings yesterday. I did provide you some information. The bid openings were late yesterday. We did compile this information between yesterday and today, and I did provide it for you tonight. I know you haven't had a chance to digest it, but I thought I'd at least go through it tonight and just kind of give you some high points and some information, and then obviously I guess my request would be to look for consideration for actually both bid openings at the next regular meeting, if you so choose. So, without further ado, I'll skip over the crack sealing bid item. The information's in there. If you have some questions, you can let me know. The main focus here, the biggest portion of the pie, was for the slurry seal. We did receive 2 bids. We had a base bid, which if you look at, there was a letter that I handed out to you. There was also a notice of award, and that we would typically prepare to the contractor as part of the agreement. And then there was a breakdown of the engineer's estimate, and then also the bid tabs for both respective to the streets. So the slurry seals that were chosen by staff and that we put out to bid were Chapin Street, and I'm just going to cover the streets, not the extents. Summit Court, South Main, South Birdsey, Richmond Street, Avalon Road. That was the base bid, and then there was some alternates that we had requested costs on. One would be Franklin Street, one was Dick Street, and one was Newcomb Street. And again, the detail is in the bid tab I broke out or gave to you the detail on. The estimate was about $53,000, and that kind of fit in line with the budget, and I'll go over that in a minute. That was for all of the base bid and the alternates. The low bid was Farner Asphalt, and that's what we had prepared our letter of recommendation on. They were at $46,671.65. The other bid was just over $50,000, so about $3,500 more. I think both very good bids. Obviously what we were anticipating for costs, and then we prepared obviously the proposed notice of award for the low bidder. And we did also include all the alternates because of the cost that came in lower than we were anticipating. We felt with the budget that was available that we could accomplish all of that work. So as far as the budget is concerned, if you recall back the total budget, and again, Kim's here, so maybe, and Davis I know is here, so I think I got my numbers right, but I'm hoping for a little support if I don't. The total streets budget was $75,000. Of that, the city has already used about 12,000 of that. Most of that went towards the county overlay project that we fund with the county money, the county aid money, which left $63,000 to cover some base patch work that was identified, crack seal and slurry seal. The way we allocated that was about 2,200 into the base patch, 9,800 into the crack seal, and 51,000 into the slurry seal. As you can see tonight, with the slurry seal that we had kind of proportioned the budget dollars out to, our bids with the alternates came in at 46,671. So it's about $3,300 under budget for the slurry seal. So it gives us a little wiggle room for some other, and I think Davis can attest to there. I'm sure he's got some patching or some other little pieces of maintenance that he probably has that he could use the funds on that weren't I guess in addition to what our low bid was. So crack seal came in very close to what we had estimated, and again, you have that information tonight. And then the base patching, there was some areas identified and proportioned out, so there was a little set aside for that. There's some larger rough potholey areas that it was determined that there would be a patch saw cut out and replaced. Both the base patch and the crack seal are much smaller contracts, so we didn't go through the formal bid process like we did for the slurry seal, so that's why they kind of look a little different tonight, why you just have the results from the crack seal and not, a formal bid tab. I can tell you that the crack seal project did incorporate crack sealing primarily on Vista Circle, so that was the location that was selected, so Grandview Court, Vista Circle area. I think one of the reasons there is that's been identified for a couple of years, but it's been passed over because it's been an alternate and the funds weren't available to take the alternates historically. So that's been kind of a higher priority as time has passed and it hasn't been crack sealed. So that was part of the maintenance part tonight as well that we had provided you information on. So that was the information. So unlike last year where we thought we ended up with some higher pricing, we thought we had some very competitive and good pricing this year as a result. So,
Andy?
Can you remind me what the $12,000 maintenance was spent on again?
Okay, so every year the county identifies county aid, so they kick in a portion of funds and then the city has to kick in a portion of funds. It's their county aid maintenance program, and they will do either a mill and overlay or they do crack seal as well, I believe. And I think they do some chip seal. So there's some options that you can choose, and what they do is they will do, normally we use the county aid funds, they kick in I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 maybe, $4,000 or $5,000, and then they use forced labor accounts from the county to come in and do the work. So basically you're getting a reduced or supplemented cost to get the work completed, and the county puts that program out every spring, and there's an application to apply for it, and then if they award it, you'll go forward. What happens is the city's got to pay in a little bit, and then they get that work in return. And every year Public Works kind of spearheads that, and then there's a city block or an overlay piece chosen, and I think in the past we've done it. It'll basically, that amount of cost will do an entire city block overlay, 300-foot stretch, and so that's been historically utilized in the past.
And that hasn't been chosen yet, that project?
Whitney Street, okay. I do know that you don't have to pick the street when you apply for the application.
Okay.
But, before the project is completed, obviously, those things have to be determined, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Do you anticipate other bids coming forward since you just opened it yesterday? You've already got some action.
Correct, and I'll be honest with you again. Slurry seal, there's not a lot of competitors in the area just because of the nature of the work. There are a couple others out there, but a lot of times, we do historically always have only seen a couple bids on this. Crack sealing, very similarly, there's about 3 companies that do crack sealing in this general area, but we only got one to return the bid. Again, a lot of times, it's really dependent on how busy they book up in the summer. We always run the risk of you know, how many do we get and do we get good pricing? But compared to our unit prices from the past, we felt like this year we did get good pricing, even though we had one bidder here. So that's why we didn't have any issue with the bid results. Again, unlike last year, we felt like the bidding was very, very high cost and non-competitive. So,
Matt?
Just to kind of frame this and bring this back around to our like ad hoc road meetings, this is us grabbing our Whistler 5 and 6s, our Whistler 7 and 8s, and doing our maintenance, trying to grab them and keep that curve going before we downgrade down into it, and to kind of put a number to an idea that we've talked about before. I think this is a really good breakdown for that, to kind of get an idea for our future meetings.
yes, exactly. Everything on here for the slurry seal would be a 6 or possibly a 7. That will bump these ratings up or maintain them where they're at for 3 to 5 years is the life of this. And so these are all roads that were probably completed 8, 10, 12 years ago, maybe even slightly older. And so they've kind of, they've been, most of them or all of them have been crack sealed historically. And so they're just kind of the next checkbox. Obviously we had, if you remember, I had like a 3-page list of slurry seal candidates. These are the ones that we sat down with staff and come up with a plan as to, you know, let's pick these off and try and knock these out. And so, yeah, you are correct. That's what we're working off of, is that information we were providing in the workshop.
Thanks, Jason. So would it be appropriate to move this forward to consider these bids and the addition of any other bids that might come in the meantime, or would that alter the process as far as going to the regular meeting if you got a bid between now and then?
We wouldn't be expecting any bids.
Okay.
We closed the bidding when we opened them, so there was a deadline, and so
Okay.
these were the results of the bids.
Oh, okay, so it's completely closed. No one
Yep.
else came. All right, that wasn't
they
clear
were
to me.
sealed.
Thank you.
Sealed blind bids.
Yep.
Okay. So open and closed yesterday?
Yep.
Perfect. Michael?
Just, for some reason, I can't figure out mandatory alternate B for the slurry seal. Dick Street from Maple to Commercial, is that gonna be running into the new construction then?
It's very close. Commercial actually is kind of the cutoff for the new construction. So that will be rebuilt as part of the DOT project going towards James Street. But there is a portion kind of right in front of Culver's, just before you get to the family restaurant there, right in front of the Chevy dealer. So there is a stretch in there. We did mill and overlay that stretch in 12, and we've crack sealed it since. And so I think the idea with this piece was to just extend the slurry seal that we've been doing on Dix. We did that over a 2-year period because of the funding, and this is kind of the last piece of Dix that that obviously doesn't have the slurry on. So the idea is that we'd slurry seal up to the intersection, and then obviously the new road. I'm not sure exactly where their limits are as far as where we're stopping. You know, I'd hope we could slurry seal up to the new limits just to make sure that it's all covered when we didn't have like a little gap or something in there. So
That's kind of why I'm asking, because I don't know which one will get, I'm assuming the slurry seal would get done first before the
yeah,
road's completed.
and I think what we'll have to do is just coordinate that. Obviously, you know, I think the intent here was to go through the square yardage is on here, so I think the intent is to go through the intersection, but I'll just have to confirm with the plan.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Andy?
Yeah, my question for you, Jason. At our roads workshop, you presented us kind of an average pricing for slurry sealing, like by the square yard.
Yeah.
Did these prices come, I mean, it's not broken down, you know, by what year, you know, what per square yard you're paying did we come in around that average?
Yeah, historically, we've always seen the, and I'm going to go off of memory here, so I might not have it exactly right, but historically, the slurry's always been around 220 to 250 in that area per square yard. And, you know, what you can see here is if you look at this, you know, I think most of these are in that 250 to maybe 270 range. It's not out of line. Obviously, there's a little inflation in costs over the years, so we've seen that price creep up even a little bit closer to the $3 mark. But in event, these are all less than $3. Sometimes, because we do these on lump sum, the reason we do each of these as kind of a single unit and we don't break it down per square yard price, although we estimate it that way and we design it that way, The problem is after somebody goes out there, we have to go out and measure it to make the payment to verify, rather than just saying, if you go from here to here, we'll pay X amount of dollars, and not worry about the tit for tat. Sometimes they'll measure it up and come up with a different number, and then we have to go out there and rectify it, and that's the way we avoid that. But again, that unit price that we really kind of base all of that off of, that we talked about in those workshops, I think I threw out the number $2.75 actually. So that kind of fits in line with what we're seeing here again, so. I think we've seen it a little cheaper historically, but, you know, over the years, it's crept up.
All right, thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
So we'll move those forward and consider those at the next regular meeting. All right, next topic on the agenda is we need to consider a change of date for the next council meeting because August 1st has a conflict with National Night Out. Well, a couple folks ready to jump on this one.
I have a question, actually.
Perfect, go for it, Mike.
Since our meeting would be on August 1st, can we technically have it on Monday or not? Because it's not August.
Too.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
We did that in another month last year, I think in March.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
good question. That's what I had too. Andy?
My comment was gonna be, I'm gonna be on vacation, but if it is moved to the 31st, I will be here.
Okay.
So that works for
Something
me.
to think about. At this point, I guess we'll be taking ideas on dates. I'm pretty much flexible that whole week, so we could do Monday. That would be fine with me as well. Matt?
I'm good the entire week.
Okay. Give everybody a chance to check their phone. What was that, Rod?
I have to vacuum my dog, but I'm good.
Vacuum your dog?
It's a hair-raising proposition right there.
Good to move it either way all week, although I would prefer not having it Monday. But Wednesday would work.
I'll be on vacation.
Okay.
One for the other.
Right.
Pick who you want.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss the second meeting in August, Andy, so maybe we could share notes if you can't be at the first one. Rod?
Golf
anything
league
else?
on Wednesdays.
-2.
No Wednesdays.
Well, and to clarify, I can attend Monday. I just
Yeah, I'm with you on
prefer
the
not to.
preference of avoiding Mondays.
We'll see you on Monday.
Yeah.
First part of the week's always a big get my stuff in a group day.
That's fine. So Monday?
Yeah, I think so. I think it sounds like we have a Monday consensus for July 31st. Since that's kosher, given that it's not August yet, but we're missing it by a day. All right, so that is decided. Now we have to take a motion on going into closed session per state statute 19.85, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require, specifically to discuss developer agreement with Drexel Building Supply for potential development in TIF number 4.
So moved.
So I have a
Second.
motion and a second. And for that, we do need roll call, correct? Thank you.
Hendrickson,
Aye.
Kenny,
Aye.
Malat, Reed, Rule,
Aye.
Tome, Traxler,
Aye.
unanimous.
And before we go off the air tonight, I just want to let everybody know this is our last agenda topic for the evening, so we will not be returning to the air. And I thank everyone for watching and attending. Good night.